Hey guys, Dan here with today's daily quarantine video, and I thought I was going to be reviewing the new episode of The Connors for you tonight. I thought it was going to be the season finale of The Connors. Both of those are wrong. There's actually 2 episodes left for this season of The Connors, but tonight is not one of them. They're airing a rerun. It's going to be the next 2 weeks, actually. So next Tuesday and the Tuesday after, I will have brand new Connors reviews for you. But what does that mean for today? What can I review? I've been thinking about it, and I think it's finally time to give you my first ever book review. I don't read a ton of books, so it is rare that I want to even review one. But I've talked about this book several times on the show in various ways. It just sort of keeps coming up tangentially to whatever I am reviewing at the time, and it is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. This is, it's actually been out a little while. It's not like it's a brand new book or anything. It came out in 2016, but they are actually in the works of making this into a movie with Lupita Nyong'o starring as Trevor Noah's mother. So, you know, I thought that was interesting. But I read probably, I don't know, sometimes 3 books a year, sometimes more, sometimes less. Sometimes I don't read any books in a year. It just kind of depends on what's going on. But I know a lot of you are sort of wondering what to do with all your time these days, and I've heard a lot of people say, just in general, you know, on Facebook or whatever, give me some reading suggestions. And, you know, I'm bored, whatever. This book is one of the best books I've ever read. My mom recommended it to me, and I love Trevor Noah. I mean, I don't have cable anymore, so when I watch The Daily Show, it's usually through excerpts, you know, on YouTube or whatever. But I was very, very faithful to Jon Stewart. I watched The Daily Show every single night for probably 12 years maybe, and then when Trevor Noah took over, I watched it for a little while, and then I got rid of cable maybe 6 months after that. So, you know, I've seen him pop up and stuff. I don't know if I've seen a full episode in a few years, though. But, and at first I thought maybe he wasn't the best choice to take over for John. I thought, well, there's so many great correspondents on this show. Maybe he should have given it to this person or this person. But I was proven wrong. I should never doubt Jon Stewart. His instincts are great. Trevor Noah has become not only a great host, I think, of The Daily Show, but just a great person in the industry, a great celebrity. You know, he is very well spoken, just like Jon Stewart was. He's very well read, just like Jon Stewart was. So I think, you know, at this point, it was a great replacement. So my mom read this book, my sister-in-law read this book, and I love biographies. Biographies are one of my favorite genres of books. You know, I've read, and usually it is sort of like of the celebrity variety. I've read, you know, the Johnny Cash book that led to the Walk the Line movie. I read the Michael J. Fox bio where he talks about his, you know, battles with Parkinson's and everything. I read a Dick Van Dyke biography a few years ago. And, you know, there's been more than that. I've read a biography about my favorite band, Pearl Jam. And, you know, just over the years I've read many biographies, but none have struck me the way this book has. For one thing, a lot of the books I've been mentioning are more about the celebrity version of this person. There's a little bit of backstory about, oh, here's what happened in my childhood, and da-da-da-da-da, but the bulk of it is about sort of one thing or one aspect. You know, Johnny Cash's was a lot about his drug addiction. You know, Michael J. Fox's, it was a lot about his Parkinson's, but also, you know, the first half was all about his celebrity and becoming famous and everything. You know, Alec Baldwin, same thing. You know, there was a lot leading up, which, you know, was sort of his home life in Boston, but then the bulk of the book is about his celebrity status. This is all before Trevor Noah even really becomes an adult. I mean, I think when it ends, he's 18, but for the most part, it's about his young life, his childhood in apartheid South Africa. And I think because of that, because there's no real celebrity angle to it, you know, this could really be anyone's story, but because we know Trevor Noah and we know how well he turned out and how, you know, how big and famous he is now, based on who he is as a person, you know, and now we know about his upbringing. It's like, I think the story is that much more impactful. This could be anybody's story, and it probably was a lot of kids growing up in South Africa. Probably not to the same degree. Trevor has a lot of very, very interesting and colorful people in his life, not least of which is his mother. But because we know who he is now, we're able to sort of, I don't know, identify certain characteristics that we still know about him these days, which is how intelligent he is and how clever he is and all of that. And so essentially, this book takes you through, he's probably, I mean, it doesn't really talk about his life like as a baby, more or less, maybe a little bit, but mostly it's about his life with his mother, and a bit about his stepfather as well. And the bulk of the whole base of the title, Born a Crime, is that he came from a mixed family, and because of that, they had to sort of hide out in various stages of his life, and he never really quite fit in because there were white kids, there were black kids, but there weren't too many mixed kids, and so he, because of that, felt really out of place pretty much his whole childhood, because he would try and fit in, and they'd be like, oh, well, you're not this enough, you're not white enough, you're not black enough, you're not whatever. And he goes through learning the different languages. There's all these different dialects in South Africa that I sure didn't realize, and I mentioned this in a recent Netflix show that debuted, I think in January, where they actually use 3 or 4 different of these languages, Afrikaans and Soweto, or Soweto I guess was one of the names, but one of the names of the towns he was in, but I'm trying to think of all the languages, but yeah, there's so he basically tries to learn these dialects so he can kind of fit in with anybody wherever he is. People can talk and he will understand them, and that has served him very well. And it goes through him becoming a teenager and starting to rebel and hating his stepfather and running, and he had a little cottage industry making these illegal mixed CDs and selling illegal goods and all of this kind of stuff with his buddies, and working very, very hard for everything he has. And religion plays a factor here, and his whole family upbringing plays a factor here. And it's as much his story as it is his mom's story too. It's a wonderful, wonderful love letter to his mother. And the last, it's in pretty bite-sized chapters. Each one's maybe 8 or 10 pages, and then the last part of the book, which is basically about the chapter is called My Mother's Life, and it goes on for 20 pages, maybe even more, 250. Yeah, it's 20. It's almost 30 pages. And it's just one big chapter, and it's all about her history, and we see a lot of things in the book from his perspective, but the last chapter, the last 30 pages, whatever, is from her perspective, and her almost getting killed, and all of this. It is, I don't like to do spoilers on this show, so I can't really go into the details of what goes on. But it is a must read, and it's a quick read too. It's I have the paperback version, which is about 290 pages, maybe 285, something like that. The hardback version, I guess, is 306, so it's a little bigger. But he is such a strong writer, which you would expect from somebody that works the Daily Show. When the Daily Show started, it was Craig Kilborn, who I don't really like, never did, and it was really a joke show, and it still is a humorous look at the news, but it is hard-hitting news these days. I mean, it has been for a long, long time under the vision of Jon Stewart, and Trevor Noah is, like I said earlier, sort of just taking that ball and running further with it. And so he is a very gifted writer. He is a great storyteller. And the way he talks about the different towns and the different people, and he doesn't necessarily describe them with, all these flourishes, but you get an absolute sense of where he's talking about, just from the basic description, because the words he uses, are so colorful and so powerful. So I'm very interested to see this go to the big screen, because I think there's a ton you can do with this story. Lupita Nyong'o is a great actress, and I think she'll bring a lot of character to Mother Noah. And I think you kind of need somebody like that, because she, even though, like I said, pretty much the whole thing is from his perspective, from his eyes, you really see a lot. You get to know his mother, I would say, as much as you get to know him through his stories and through his descriptions of her. So it's really almost as much her story as it is his, which is also something that makes it unique as a biography. Like in the other ones I mentioned, like Johnny Cash, he talks about June Carter, and he talks about some of his, family members, his kids and stuff, but really, he's the focal point. Same with Michael J. Fox. Yes, we learn about his wife and how his wife has dealt with his Parkinson's and all of that stuff, and how they met on Family Ties and this and that. But it's, mostly Michael J. Fox's story. This is really a pretty much a two-hander. It's a lot of his story, but man, it's a ton about his mom, and you can see even in the chapters where he's having to separate himself from her, or he's rebelling against her, he sort of talks about, not so much with regret, like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. It's almost implied because of everything that she's done for him. But he kind of gives reasons too, well, the stepfather was abusive, and he couldn't stand to see it anymore, and, stuff like that. Really, I don't read much, so, it's hard to say, oh, my favorite books, of all time are whatever. I mean, I love Catcher in the Rye and Perks of Being a Wallflower, which are two, coming-of-age stories. Two of my favorite books of all time, for sure. But this really is a coming-of-age story, too. It just happens to be a true one. I don't really have anything negative to say about this. It's such an easy read. I read it, I'm not one of these people who will just sit for 2 hours and just read a book, unless I'm like at the beach or something. So it's something that the chapters are in small enough chunks that I would just read one chapter every night before bed. Like I said, they're, about 10 pages each, 12 pages, something like that. And I did that for, about 3 weeks or whatever until I was finished with it. But this is, if you are an avid reader, if you like reading, a book or two every, couple of weeks or every month or whatever, I think you can get through this very, very quickly. It's the best biography I've ever read, hands down, and it's probably one of my favorite books. So I'm glad I got to share it with you in review form. Like I said, I've never really reviewed a book ever, so I mean, I guess Book Reports is a review. Back in school, I did a bunch of book reports, of course, like everybody. I suppose that's a review of sorts, but on the YouTube channel, I don't read really enough to recommend books to people, but if you are looking for something to read during the shutdown or ever, this is a great one. And if you're into audiobooks, I understand Trevor Noah himself does the recording of the audiobook. So if you don't want to read but want to listen, that may be another way to go. But Born a Crime from Trevor Noah gets an A+ from me. This is an excellent, excellent book. Thank you so much for watching. The Connors reviews will be back next week. But I'm going to have a lot of guests on the show coming up, because now that I figured out how to do the Zoom cast, we can do recordings over Zoom. So I'm going to have another Dan Does Disney with Tim coming up. I'm going to have a Frasier Friday with Joe coming up. And I'm finally going to get to do the rest of the top 100 grossing movies of 2019 with Justin. We didn't do the top 25 before the shutdown, so I'm going to record that soon as well. Hopefully have that for you this weekend. So look for all that stuff. Look for my weekly TV reviews. Look for the weekly Masked Singer guesses. Weekly movie reviews, too, for all the new on-demand movies. And that, I suppose, will do it. So thank you so much. If you've read this book, I want to hear your thoughts on it too. If you have read books similar to this that you think I would enjoy, please let me know, because I am also interested in reading a bit during the shutdown as well. I have some books that I haven't cracked yet, and I maybe will at some point, but I actually started one after the Trevor Noah book, since I'd gotten into the habit of reading every night, and it just wasn't all that good. I was like, well, this is nothing compared to Trevor Noah, so kind of put it down for the time being. But yeah, if you have any book recommendations, please let me know. I'd love to hear. But that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Stay safe. Bye.